If you've ever watched the anime for Yu-Gi-Oh, the first episode probably sticks out in your mind. In the episode, Yami Yugi is getting absolutely destroyed by Seto Kaiba until this iconic scene happens.
Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi. My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba, but it does contain the unstoppable Exodia. I've assembled all 5 special cards, all 5 pieces of the puzzle.
There's something so inspiring about this. The idea that even from the depths of despair, you can still win the game on your own terms. That building your deck around a certain win condition can allow you to beat insurmountable odds. While Exodia is the most famous of all, these alternative ways of winning are a staple of TCGs. From the good, the bad, and the ugly, this is a brief analysis of alt-win cons in card games.
Yu-Gi-Oh's alternate win conditions have always stuck out to me. When I was a kid, I opened this card, Last Turn. And yeah, if you couldn't tell by the crease in the middle, I was only 4 years old. Released in 2003 in Legacy of the Duelist, the artwork features Hino Kagetsuchi in a final desperate battle against the Yamada Dragon. The card is even shown on the cover of the booster pack. This card fascinated me as a kid, mostly because I couldn't figure out how all of this worked. So, how does Last Turn work?
Here's YouTuber Raren reading Last Turn's lengthy effect for us.
This card can only be activated during your opponent's turn when your life points are 1,000 or less. Select one monster to your side of the field and send all other cards on the field into their respective owner's hands to their respective graveyards. Wait, what? In the respective owner's hands to the respective graveyards? All the cards on the field in the respect. Okay, sure. Your opponent must then special summon one monster from his or her deck in face-up attack position and attack your selected monster. Any battle damage from this battle is treated as 0. The player whose monster remains alone on the field at the end phase of this turn wins the duel. Any other case results in a draw.
New record!
As a kid, this card seemed like an epic battle between my biggest baddest monster and my opponent's biggest baddest monster. A duel to the death, what's not to love? I tried so hard to make this card work when I was younger, and I failed every single time. There's 2 big issues with Last Turn. 1, you have to be below 1,000 life, which is kind of difficult when you start at 8,000, and setting your life points that low just can kill you sometimes. And 2, you have to guarantee that you are going to win with your monster and thus win the duel. But if only little Pim had had access to some different cards, maybe he could have cooked up a combo deck.
See, there's a card called Wall of Revealing Light, which allows you to pay as many life points as you want in order to stop your opponent from attacking. And this, in effect, allows you to set your life points to 1,000. But then how do we guarantee our monster is gonna win every time? Well, there's a secret trick with Last Turn. Because of its wording, it first clears the entire board and hand except your monster, and then allows your opponent to special summon. Except, what if your monster specifically said that your opponent can't special summon? Well, then you would have the only monster on the board and win immediately. Jogan, the Spiritualist, was exactly that card. With this 3-card combo, Last Turn created a combo tech that could guarantee a 1-turn kill. It took Konami about 2 years to ban Last Turn completely, and the card has never been unbanned or reprinted.
The artwork on the card Last Turn has always stuck with me since I was a kid. I opened that card when I was 4 years old. It feels like something bigger is happening in that card. When you play that card, when you're able to imagine that scenario in your head. And I think that's what alternate win conditions do, that nothing else can in card games. They make you feel a part of the world, a part of a scenario that you otherwise couldn't imagine yourself in. It's the closest thing that some of these card games have to being really, truly immersive role-playing games.
Combo decks have been a staple of Hearthstone since the very beginning. Stringing together cards to deal 30 damage in a single turn and winning the game can be exhilarating. However, even from these early days, there were ways of securing yourself against these combos. Control Warriors were well known for generating enough armor to get out of range of a combo, making Freeze Mage players cry. Of course, Freeze Mage had its own way of preventing an OTK, Ice Block. To say that Ice Block was one of the strongest Hearthstone cards ever printed would be an understatement. This card is the bane of combo players, making it impossible to kill your opponent in a single turn. Or it was until the release of Knights of the Frozen Throne in 2017. Every class was given a Death Knight hero card, a card that permanently changed the game, leading to slow incremental victory as it outvalued your opponent's inferior base hero. Every hero card saw play, but we are only interested in one, Uther, the Ebon Blade. While his initial effect gives you a 5/3 weapon with lifesteal, which is more than enough to stabilize, sometimes even downright kill your opponent, his hero power brought something new to Hearthstone. Every turn, you could press the hero power to summon a random 1 out of 4 horsemen. Have all 4 in the field at once, and you win the game. Of course, as 2/2 minions, it's difficult to have them survive the 4 turns you would need, so paladins have to cheat a little. Using effects to add copies of the horsemen to the hand until you finally can play all 4 has been a staple way to complete this compelling effect. But the most interesting way has to be using Auction Master Beardo, a card that allows you to refresh your hero power after playing a spell. By getting extra coins in your hand with cards like Burgling Bully and playing cheap spells like the Secrets, Paladin had a way to use the hero power 4 times in a row and complete its goal, to instantly kill the enemy hero.
The last book of the Bible, St. John's Revelation, he makes reference to the 4 horsemen, riders who seem to herald the end of the world. Later commentary would use the context of John's writing to personify the 4 horsemen as war, pestilence, famine, and death, with only the latter being specifically named by John and is said to ride a pale and sickly horse. These 4, followed by Hades himself in John's writing, are given authority to bring upon humanity the ultimate destruction.
Just 3 years after the rotation of Uther the Ebon Blade, Hearthstone would reintroduce the concept of the Horseman. This time as a neutral card that when it died would shuffle the other copies into your deck. Instead of having to summon them all at the same time, now players had to kill all 4 of them to collect an instant victory. Even the Horsemen themselves have been consumed by the unstoppable apocalypse of the end. From a player's perspective, the concept of assembling the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse feels like a thematic fit for an instant win condition. A good aesthetic meets a just, satisfying enough set of hoops to jump through. Uther's legacy would set the tone of instant win conditions for Hearthstone in the years to come. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a game about playing the same 3 days over and over again, trying to prevent the end of the world. And that's pretty heavy, especially for a children's game. But there's something so hopeful about it. There's something hopeful about seeing this world come together at the end. Seeing how different people grapple with their own mortality. And when you finally do save the world, you realize that it's a world worth saving. Because you've seen these people. You've seen how each and every one of them chooses to spend their final days. There's nothing like that in a card game.
There's 2 things that alternate win conditions need to be seen as successful and well remembered: good function and good form. In terms of function, does it bring about interesting, exciting, or intriguing gameplay? Is the win condition something that can be done too easily, or is it too difficult and unfun to try to pull off? Do players feel a sense of achievement when they pull off that win condition? Or maybe the win condition is just something kind of boring. The other part of a good alt win con is its form. What is the lore or the aesthetic of a card that makes us feel like this card depicts a scenario in which we should be allowed to win the game instantly? Exodia, the figurehead of all alternate win conditions, is this sealed away god, and when assembled, destroys your opponent with his awe-inspiring power. Of course, the anime does a lot of heavy lifting to establish this card as worthy to win the game, but with just the name and the card art, you can feel like you're freeing this ancient god. Unfortunately, I have never assembled the full Exodia. I'm missing both of his arms And as for this kind of scuffed setup of the legs and the head, I've had this in the same binder since I was 12. But there's something about that, about putting all those pieces together, that's so satisfying. It's something that even today, knowing that I'll never play Exodia, I still feel this sense, this urge to finish the puzzle, to get the other two pieces. It's something I almost did for this video. I almost ordered the other two arms of Exodia just so I'd have the full set.
So far, we've mostly just taken a look at alternate win conditions that I think are very good. So I think it's only fair that we look at one that I think is not so great. So let's look at Thassa's Oracle from Magic the Gathering. When it comes to alternate win conditions that fail both the functionality and form test, Thassa's Oracle feels like a prime example. And that's not just my opinion. Here's one of Magic the Gathering's developers, Gavin Verhey, talking about the problem with the function of Thassa's Oracle.
An example of an alternate win condition card that I would call a mistake because it doesn't follow these heuristics is Thassa's Oracle. It's a 2-mana card which can easily win you the game with any way to exile your library, such as Demonic Consultation, and there's no great response outside of counter magic. Even if you kill the Oracle in response to the trigger, they'll still win the game if they have an empty library.
And what Gavin is basically saying is, look, alternate win conditions, they're supposed to be hard to pull off, they're supposed to require you to somewhat build your deck around it, and they're not supposed to be just extremely powerful. And Thassa's Oracle fails all of those. It's just too good and too easy of a card to pull off.
In regards to its form, what part of this card feels like you should win the game? The effect is very strong, but it doesn't feel like it particularly should be. Why is Thassa's Oracle able to just bring about the end of the game? Aren't oracles just some type of predictor of the future? Thassa can't end the game by herself in any of her incarnations, but her Oracle can, and it's only a 2-mana 1/3 merfolk wizard. Not a powerful god or legendary figure. In the grand scheme of MTG lore, this card means nothing.
The end of the world as a concept, especially in mythology, is always very interesting. And I think the most beautiful one has to be the idea of Ragnarok in the Norse mythology. In the Norse mythos, Ragnarok is the death of the gods. But the death of the gods brings about the new world. The world in which humans are able to flourish. It's not the end. It's a new beginning.
Okay, now, love this card. Final countdown.
This is Jeff Leonard. And the card he just put down on that table, to the enjoyment of everyone, was Final Countdown. Final Countdown has a very simple effect. In 20 turns, you win the duel. Seems easy enough, right? But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is notorious for being a quick game, even back in 2003 when this card was released in Dark Crisis. What hope does Jeff Leonard have in making it to 20 turns? Well, the real win condition for Jeff's deck is this: Mystic Mine. One of the most oppressive cards to ever be printed. If you want a full breakdown on how this card broke Yu-Gi-Oh!, I highly recommend this video by Garrett Shear. The long and short of it is, as long as your opponent has more monsters than you, Mystic Mine completely shuts down all monsters, meaning that if activated, this card can just stall the game out entirely. While some decks may run a copy or two of a spell-destroying spell, Final Countdown puts you on a clock of just 10 of your own turns to find an answer. Seeing Jeff drop Final Countdown in the top 16 of Pro Play Tour Orlando and watch him slowly increase the count on his dice, only for his opponent to scoop on the 19th turn. A card that for 17 years of its life had been written off as completely useless, still can win a game because its silly little win condition was fulfilled.
The beauty of this card is not only are you going to win once you get it out there.
Alternate win conditions need to tell a story. If they fail to do that, then they fail as a win condition. And sometimes the way that they create stories is in unexpected ways. Like with Final Countdown and Jeff Leonard. In so many ways, Final Countdown is an absolute failure. The card art says nothing about why this card should take 20 turns for you to win the game. The way that it wins the game is in itself a very boring concept. 2,000 life points, 20 turns, win the game, and that's it. It's from that monotony of the card that we get those moments like with Jeff Leonard. We create our stories around it. The story of Final Countdown is never going to be about the lore of the actual card. It is forever going to be recognized as that card that one time won in the top 16 of a tournament because Jeff Leonard brought it. Cthulhu is a staple character in Hearthstone at this point. One of the old gods, he sits on a pantheon with Yashiraj, N'Zoth, and Yogg-Saron as ancient, powerful, and terrible beings for the world of Azeroth. His name invokes Cthulhu, the Lovecraftian horror. Methun takes this concept and runs with it. What if the mad Dr. Boom decided to recreate Cthulhu as a robot with enough power to destroy everything? Methun, in my opinion, is one of the coolest card designs ever. In order to trigger his win condition, you have to have no cards in your hand, board, or deck, and have to kill off Methun itself. This is truly a doomsday scenario, and navigating this win condition and how to build a deck around it immediately became an attraction for players, as they raced to find the most viable combos. Within a few months, 4 classes were found to have semi-viable Methun combo decks: Druid, Warlock, Priest, and Warrior. While every class could play Methun, a good deck would guarantee that they could kill him the turn he was played, avoiding any cards that could remove his effect. Druid was definitely the best and most consistent, able to draw its entire deck in a few turns while playing its remaining low-cost cards and killing off Methun. Warlock was able to play its combo even if it had a few cards left in its hand due to the effect of Cataclysm, which stopped it from getting stalled. Priest and Warrior had very similar ideas, summoning Methun and some other minions out with another effect and then blowing up their entire board. And while they weren't exactly great, they were fun combos to pull off. Sacrificing your entire deck in order to activate this Mechanical God's effect gives you the ultimate reward. As its voice line states when it's summoned,
"The era of Fresh has ended."
From a deck building perspective, Methun is really interesting to me, because it requires you to perfectly build out your deck so that not a single one of the other 29 cards is going to be dead weight. Methun relies on you having to get rid of everything, so in a lot of the Methun decks, you had to make sure that every card would be playable, or otherwise you could just get stuck with them in your hand. And I think that's a cool thing for an alternate win condition, for players to have to try and figure out what is a combo that I can do to use this card. Written in 1959 by Walter Miller, A Canticle for Leibowitz is considered by many to be one of the godfathers of 20th century sci-fi novels. The book explores humanity's distant future after a nuclear war took out the remnants of humanity. The book, taking place over the course of 3 different centuries, shows how humanity is able to grow and move on from the absolute annihilation that followed the nuclear attacks. So many of the alternate win conditions that we looked at in this video feel fitting because they hearken that idea, that emotion of the end of something. Methun, a recreation of the god of death, with Cthulhu himself being a representation of that Lovecraftian horror, Cthulhu. These otherworldly beings that control the cosmos, that control humanity's fate. These spirit messages are cards in which, after assembling the 5-letter word, you automatically win the duel. In the English release, these letters would spell out the word final. However, in the original Japanese, they instead spelled out death. Of course, all that I was able to spell with my spirit messages was this. And just take a look at the comparison between the Japanese artwork on the left and the American artwork on the right, and see how absolutely robbed we got of this cool design. At the end of each of your turns, Destiny Board will bring out one of the other letters, and you have to spell them in order of F-I-N-A-L. The reason that the spirit messages are such an awkward win condition is that you have to wait 4 turns for all the other spirit messages to come onto the board after playing Destiny Board. And if Destiny Board is destroyed at any point, then you just lose the game. You could start over, you could play another Destiny Board, but I think as a concept, Destiny Board and the spirit messages are a cool idea. It's very similar to Exodia, where you have 5 pieces of a puzzle, you put them all together, and you get to win the game. And the fact that they are based on the Ouija board is kind of a cool concept in general. But the way that it
plays out is just, like I said, it's awkward. It's like Exodia where all the individual pieces are useless, but these are really, really useless. So you have to get them in order. And so these just end up sticking in your hand. You could have all 5 Spirit Board and Spirit Message in your hand, like Exodia, and still not win the game because you have to collect them all on your board. It's awkward.
Yes. Set pass. Second try. What? I forgot to put L in?
Destiny Board is a really interesting example because it's one of the few cards in this video that has received more support over the years in order to make it better. And this is in general in line with Yu-Gi-Oh's design philosophy. Cards like Dark Spirit's Mastery and Dark Sanctuary provide the deck some utility, while Sentence of Doom is an alternate way that you are able to put the Destiny Board cards onto the field.
Activate Destiny Board one final time. We gave him an extra turn on accident, but it's okay. Activate Spirit Message L. Here we go. Ooh, very spooky. Oh, I was like, is it going to spell out hell? There's no way, right? Victory. 1 due to Destiny Board's effect.
Another example of a failed alternate win condition, in my opinion, is Seek Guidance. A Priest-exclusive card, this utilizes the questline mechanic in Hearthstone. Quests in Hearthstone always start in your hand, meaning that as an alternate win con, you are guaranteed to be able to start working on its requirements from the very beginning. The first part of the quest has you playing a 2, 3, and 4 cost card, with your reward being to discover a card from your deck, and then continue your quest. Play a 5 and a 6 cost, and you get another discover, and then play a 7 and 8 cost to complete your quest. Your final reward is Xyrella the Sanctified, a 5 mana 7/7 with taunt that shuffles the true reward into your deck, the Purified Shard, a 10 mana spell that says, destroy the enemy hero. To put it simply, this is a really boring win condition. You play cards on a curve and your reward is shuffling a card into your deck that wins the game. It also has such a weird flavor element. You have the 1 cost quest, have to play cards costing 2 to 8 mana to complete it, the final reward is a 10 cost, and Xyrella herself is 5 cost. And yeah, all of the quest rewards for that set were 5 cost minions, so the fact that there's no 9 cost as a part of this quest is just kind of lame.
And also, Xyrella was a character that was just added to Hearthstone in the previous set, Forged in the Barrens. But nowhere is there any reason to believe she should wield this power to be able to completely destroy the enemy. What is it about this shard that's so special? The deck also just plays very linearly. Mostly, it's just a control deck playing its best card on curve every turn. Most of the time, the deck will just win by stopping aggro or mid-range decks rather than just playing its win condition. From a deck building perspective, there's very little interesting about Seek Guidance. You don't have to build your deck around it at all, you just throw in good cards of every cost, and it costs you nothing to put it in. The card discovers you a card on turn 4 and 6 most games, which makes it just a pretty decent 1-cost spell. Thankfully, there were better decks in the meta, both combo decks and aggressive decks that could beat Quest Priest, but I personally see Questline Priest as the biggest failure in alternate win conditions in Hearthstone.
The plain of Amonkhet is blistering hot, barren, and full of undead. Its 2 suns brutally beat down on its only city, Naktamun, bathing it in an almost eternal light and heat. The citizens, as well as their 5 patron gods, await the return of their god pharaoh, the supposed creator of their plain, the being whose horns the city proudly have built monuments to. The prophecy states, when the second sun rests between the horns on the horizon, so begins the hour of revelation. Then the hour of glory, the hour of promise, and finally the hour of eternity. This is the world that the card Approach of the Second Sun brings us into. The effect reading, if this spell was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. This is a really cool card. The idea of the sun slowly approaching as you wait for it to be drawn and fulfill the prophecy. However, the card has a pretty cruel twist, which is that you can play multiple copies of it, and as long as you play 2 of them, then you still win the game, regardless of it being the copy you shuffled into the deck. In fact, you don't even need to have the first copy resolve to win off the second copy.
Because the first approach has been cast, it doesn't matter if resolves or not. It's the second one that has to resolve.
And as it also turns out, the god pharaoh of Amonkhet is not all he seems. Instead, the evil elder dragon Nicol Bolas invaded and took over the plane, submitting the citizens and mind-controlling the gods, in order to remake the world in his own image, convincing them that he is their god and creator. The second sun's approach instead heralds the devastation of Naktamun and the death of Amonkhet's gods.
The approach of the second sun is a lie. There is no god pharaoh coming to save the world. All that awaits the people of Amonkhet is Nicol Bolas, coming to bring about the literal end of their world. This card that's supposed to make you feel like you're part of this grand prophecy, it's a lie. Just like the gameplay of the card is a lie. It doesn't rely on you shuffling it back into the deck and drawing it again to play it again. Most of the time with this deck, you win by playing a second copy. Your opponent is expecting this approach of the second sun in 7 turns. But instead, there's a cruel twist in which they immediately lose. And that's very similar to a card we talked about earlier. Last turn. We talked about how most of the time you actually just win by making it so your opponent can't special summon a monster. That you win by denying your opponent their last turn. The card is supposed to invoke that feeling that you and your opponent both get to have a final turn, a final struggle. But the card is a lie. There's one thing about the card that I didn't mention when it comes to the flavor. Hinokage Tsuchi and the Yamada Dragon, the 2 cards shown on the card art, specifically have the text, "This card cannot be special summoned." Meaning that if you play last turn with Hinokage Tsuchi on the board, it is literally impossible for your opponent to special summon the Yamada Dragon from the effect of last turn, and vice versa. Even the card art itself is a lie. Your opponent does not get a last turn. Only you do. And realistically, that's exactly how the card ended up playing out. Your opponent can't special summon a minion. Just like on the card art. These 2 cards, Approach of the Second Sun and Last Turn, are really interesting. Because the way that they play out doesn't really fit the lore of the card in the way that you'd think. But if you look a little deeper, it's very ironically fitting. For me, Approach of the Second Sun is not the most exciting win condition in this video. It's kind of boring. I think that Magic the Gathering does something that the other 2 card games that we talked about don't make the effort to do, and that's create a world around their cards. The world of Amonkhet is so exciting that it makes a card like Approach of the Second Sun that much more interesting to play with, because of the lore that has been written about what that approach means to the world of Amonkhet. I started this video off by talking about Exodia, because I think Exodia really is the poster child for alternate win condition. Exciting as a playstyle, it's cool from a collector's perspective, and the lore of the card feels very fitting as an alternate win condition. But a lot of that is just due to the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has an anime and a manga that support the card game. There is a lore outside of just the cards themselves. The reason people remember Exodia is not because they went to their local game store one time and were able to beat their opponent by playing this win condition. Most people remember Exodia from the iconic first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! These alternate win conditions, there has to be something around them. something that makes us feel involved in them. And whether that's anime episode, an entire world built by the devs like Amonkhet, or it can just be something simpler. A card that everybody in the community rushes to try and figure out how to break, like Methun. Those are exciting things about an alternate win condition.
So many of these alternate win conditions are based on some type of god. I think there's something fundamental there. But the idea of something greater than us causing these types of events that are interesting enough to write stories. As humans, we've been doing it for thousands of years. That's why video games, like Majora's Mask, have a special draw for us as humans. While everything in the world is coming crashing down, we get to control our fate. We get to defy the odds, alternate win conditions, the ones that are good, the ones that people tell stories about, that people remember. It's about taking agency of that feeling, of the end of something, the end of the world, about being able to tap into the power of those stories about the end of something.